Hi everybody, I'm Greg Fishel and welcome to bonus weather video number 2 for this week. Finally got it out. And today we're going to talk about something called normals. And it's something I've been uncomfortable with for years. I've tried to push doing it a different way, but that idea has never caught any traction. But that doesn't make me any less passionate about the fact that I think that's the way things should be done. So let me elaborate on this now. So what are normals? Okay. It turns out that it's a 30-year average, and it's updated every 10 years. Okay, so right now we're using the period 1991 to 2020, and when we get to the year 2031, then we'll be using the period 2001 to 2030. So we're not going to have to worry about any updates for a while. But is the weather ever really normal? I would argue that it is not. Would a normal range make more sense for any given day of the year, since the weather is always changing and varying from one day and one time to the next? So there's something in statistics called standard deviations, and basically this is what it boils down to. If you take the average temperature, or the average number in a data set, plus or minus one standard deviation covers 68.2% of the cases. Have you ever seen a bell curve in statistics, that sort of like goes like this? Well, the middle, 68.2%, which represents 2/3 of the bell, basically, is going to be where most of the data falls. And then as you get out to the tail on either end of the bell curve, then there's much less data there. So that's more of the extremes than what would be considered normal. Now, the mean plus or minus 2 standard deviations covers 95.4% of the data, assuming that it has a normal distribution. And plus or minus 3 standard deviations covers 99.6% of the cases. Okay, so let's take a look at a graph of the normal temperatures at RDU. The middle line there is the actual normal high, or the 30-year average. The line plus or above and below that middle line is plus or minus 1 standard deviation, and the top and bottom lines are plus or minus 2 standard deviations. And notice right off the bat, in the summertime, those lines are closer together than they are in the wintertime, which makes total sense because you don't get these wild swings of temperature, normally anyways, pardon the pun, in the summertime that you do in the winter. The temperature swings are much more impressive and the weather is much more volatile in the wintertime. And so that's why those lines are farther apart in January and also December, and fairly tightly packed. Not right on top of each other, but more tightly packed in the summertime. So what about this idea? On January 15th, the normal high is 51.5. That would imply that 68.2% of the time, the high temperature you would expect to be between 40.2 and 62.8. Maybe that would be a good normal range, that anything in that range would be considered fairly common for this part of the country this time of year. Now, 95.4% of the time, it would go between 28.9 and 74.1, and 99.6% of the time, 19.6 to 84.4. Well, if we look back through history, the all-time record low maximum for January is 17, set in 1972 and 1985. That's not far away from that 19.6. And the all-time record max is 80, set back in 2002, and that's not that far away from the 84.4. So you can sort of see how these numbers all match up. Now, in summertime, the normal high is 91.1 on July 15th. That would imply that 68% of the time we're going to be between about 86 and 96, 95% of the time between 80 and 102, and 99.6% of the time between 75 and 107. Now, it is interesting to note that the all-time record low max for July is 63, set back in 1892. So that really is an anomaly compared to what the statistics would tell us. And then the all-time record max for July is 105, set in 1952 and 2012, and that's pretty close to the 107 that you see there associated with the 3 standard deviations. So, conclusions. This is my own personal conclusions for what it is worth. Normals are nothing more than an average of extremes. The weather is always changing. It's different from one year to the next, and it just seems stupid to me to use one number and say that's normal for a given date. It doesn't make any sense. It's important to know the normal variance at different times of the year, knowing that the weather is likely to be a little bit more volatile or have a wider range of solutions in January than it is in July. And hypothetically, if the high is 53 and the normal high is 50, it's not above normal. That's dumb. It's just well within the normal range for that time of year, which if you use one standard deviation as the definition of that, it would go from about 40 to 60. Nothing unusual, not above normal, just within the normal range. Okay, those are my thoughts. Again, these thoughts have not been adopted by anybody. They're just my own personal thoughts, and I will continue to live by that until I have some evidence that it should be something different. All right, that is bonus weather video number 2 for this week. Hope you enjoyed it. Sorry it's so late, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. We'll be back with our next daily weather update on Monday and our next bonus weather video on Tuesday. Happy weekend, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.